3, 2, and 1. Hey, everybody. Latest edition of the Dizzo's Den podcast. We bring in our colleague from the Bison Media Zone, forum columnist Mike McFeely, on a special podcast alert since the bat signal went up on realignment, which Mike's going to groan when I say this. There are 3 topics that get me going. 1 is uniforms and jerseys.
Yes.
2 is scheduling for like 15 years out.
Yes.
3 is realignment.
Yes.
And this is obviously a monster one. The story that the Houston Chronicle broke yesterday, right in the middle of SEC Media Days, which is just outstanding.
Just fantastic.
That Oklahoma and Texas are interested in leaving the Big 12 to join the Southeastern Conference. If you're wondering why in a podcast in Fargo, North Dakota, why we're talking about it, well, you obviously don't pay a whole lot of attention to how college athletics work. And second, the tentacles of this will, I believe, reach the higher echelon of the FCS world. Mike has a story out, part of his continuing series on seeing if North Dakota State is interested in the football bowl subdivision. I agree with every word of it since he and I have been chatting about it. We talked about it earlier today, and I figure it's a good way to just chat here for a few minutes on the pod here. The interesting part to me is the fact that Texas and Oklahoma want to leave a league that they've been in forever and join the cool kids, so to speak, because the Southeastern Conference is where everyone wants to be, which is the number 1 conference in the country.
And you know, being in television, that it's all.
Oh boy.
Well, no, but it's a fact though. I mean, I give you a lot of crap about it because everything you reference goes back to television. But when it comes to college sports, it's legitimate because it's all about money.
Correct.
It's all about the money. And so Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC, yes, because it's the coolest place to be in college football. But the reason it's the coolest place to be is because there are hundreds of millions of dollars to be made by schools that are already generating hundreds of millions of dollars. And so what you're going to have is a super conference, right?
Yes.
I mean, they're totally just
16-team monster league.
16-team monster league that would include Alabama, LSU,
Georgia,
Florida, Texas, Oklahoma. And the scrubs in the conference aren't bad either, right? You know, you got South Carolina, Mississippi State.
Yep.
I mean, it's just this.
Tennessee used to be good.
Yes, but they're Tennessee, so
Auburn.
We forgot about Auburn. Just like jeepers. I mean, what's going on here?
So if this comes to pass, and Mike, everything you've read and everything I've read, I think it wouldn't get to this point if the tracks were this far down the road. I think the way it reads, this is happening. I don't think there's any powers that can stop it. Texas A&M's AD and president say, well, we are the Texas school in the SEC, and by bylaw, they need 4 schools to say no. I can't imagine they find 2 more outside of Texas A&M and Missouri.
Missouri and Texas A&M are going to be the 2 that vote no because they want to protect the moves that they made,
and they're the 2
10
newest
years
schools.
ago.
They're the 2 newest ones.
I mean, Missouri got out of the Big 12, and good for them.
Right, they were
to join the SEC.
Yep.
And so they want to protect that territory. They're not going to be able to do that because if you're the other schools in the SEC, why would you say no to Texas and Oklahoma? It doesn't make any sense. And right now, Texas, frankly, is no threat.
Correct.
Competitively in
Oklahoma
football.
is.
Oklahoma's pretty good.
Yep.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's going to happen. It sure seems like, and then that leaves the Big 12.
Oh man,
as basically a glorified Group of 5 league, and it's going to begin. The tentacles are all going to start reaching out across the landscape of college football.
So let's start with the Big 12. You take Texas and Oklahoma away, you've decimated that league. You've taken off the 2 bell cows of the league. You now leave it with Iowa State is probably the best team in that league.
Yeah,
take that 2 out. I mean, Iowa State has been just a doormat forever.
Just repeat that sentence and think about what you're saying there. Just repeat that sentence.
Iowa State would probably be the best team in that league.
Yeah. There's the state of the Big 12 right there for football.
Your guy, Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State would still be there, and they're obviously not thrilled about the potential of Oklahoma leaving. That's their biggest rival. Right. TCU has had some nice years. They've bubbled up. West Virginia, Chris Kleiman's Kansas State team is there. Texas Tech, Baylor, and Kansas. That's what the
Oof.
Big 12 would be. They'd be 8 schools left there, and
It's a mixture of the old Southwestern Conference
Right.
and the
old Big Eight,
scrubs,
yeah.
right, and the scrubs of the Big Eight.
Yeah.
Frankly,
so the question then is, if you're Bob Bowlesby, a fellow Dragon alum like yourself, what does he do? They're meeting today. The presidents and the ADs are meeting today at 5 o'clock on this.
and the Big 12 might lose more schools.
I think it's reasonable to expect. I think Kansas to look out for itself.
Go somewhere.
And now people are saying, wait a minute, Kansas football.
No,
they're looking at basketball.
Yes.
And I shared this theory with you earlier today. If I'm Bill Self, I'm like, well, okay, if we're going to get out of the Big 12, let's call up the ACC and say, hey, would you want us for basketball? Because then you could have North Carolina, Duke, Syracuse, NC State, Virginia won the national championship a couple years ago.
And Kansas.
And Kansas is a basketball league.
But Kansas, geographically, not that matters so much anymore. It doesn't. But geographically, the Big Ten would also be a possibility for Kansas because the Big Ten is going to be the Big Ten. They're a powerful conference. They're one of, they're always going to be a Power 5 conference.
Are they a good academic school? You know that on Kansas? I don't. Would they fit the mold
sure,
of the academic school?
It's the flagship University of Kansas, and so that would fit.
God, that would fit for basketball too. They would take
my
them
goodness
too,
gracious! And a team like Minnesota would welcome Kansas because it would be one more team to beat that they could
football.
beat in
Yes,
football.
Yes, yeah,
absolutely. Oh, okay, so
if that happens, now who's going to go into the Big 12? So what we're talking about for the purposes of our pod, then they're looking basically in the group of 5.
Yes,
right, to see who's going to come up to the majors, so to speak.
But even if they do that, okay, so even if they look at the Mountain West and say, okay, Boise State is probably the best known institution in the Mountain West. Air Force.
Those two by far in my mind.
Colorado State, Colorado State fits in terms of the academic footprint, and it's a state school. It's a public institution, as Boise State is as well. I mean, do you look at those schools? Or do they look at the AAC, the American Athletic Conference?
I think they look that way.
Do they look at Cincinnati? Do they look at Memphis?
Central Florida?
Or does the ACC now? All these major leagues are going to have to make counter moves to what the SEC did. So if you're the ACC, do you look at Central Florida?
Maybe.
I mean, Central Florida is a big time school.
It's in Orlando. I mean, there you go.
I just recently talked to a professor at Central Florida for a story I did. He has a connection to Shanley. He's an old speech and debate coach here in Fargo. Central Florida has like 47,000 students.
It's a monster.
And growing.
Yep.
It's huge. And they're,
that's where Scott Frost was when he turned them into a power.
Football, they're good. They'll be good in whatever they want to be good in eventually because it's Central Florida.
What about out west? Look at the Pac-12 because they're not going to stand. And this was the old, 10 years ago, Texas was going to bolt for the Pac-12, and everything fell apart there at the last minute. Because you mentioned Boise. I'll throw BYU out there as well. Because
BYU is an independent.
Right, because how the new college football playoff is going to work, I don't think it's going to benefit the independent route, how the structure of it will look.
It'll benefit Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, yes.
But does the Big Ten then go after Notre Dame? And does Notre Dame finally say, okay, because of everything else going on and because of the college football playoff, we want to be affiliated with the conference, and so the Big Ten it is.
Well, see, they're interesting.
And by the way, how awesome would that be
my God.
if Notre Dame was in the Big Ten? But as an old Big Ten guy myself, who hates Rutgers, Maryland being in the Big Ten, and Penn State, how awesome!
Nebraska?
Yes, how awesome would it be for Notre Dame to be in the Big Ten?
Awesome is the answer to that question.
Yes.
The issue with Notre Dame, though, is their hockey is a Big Ten school, which no one cares about, but every other sport, they're ACC. And they just played ACC football this past year because they couldn't find
the COVID thing, right?
a league to play in. So they would have to get themselves out of that. That's really
They might have some money at Notre Dame.
Oh, a little bit.
They might be okay on that front.
I am interested to see what that happens. So if those leagues, those Power 5, end up grabbing a Boise, end up grabbing Central Florida, then for our purposes of this pod, here's North Dakota State, here's James Madison sitting there saying that we want it. we certainly know what at James Madison they wanted. I think there are certain entities at North Dakota State that wanted to move up to the FBS division, and here would be the opportunity.
Absolutely. And the problem with North Dakota State, well, there's a lot of problems with moving to FBS. Let's just be, frankly, James Madison has a much easier path to FBS.
There's no doubt.
Than NDSU because of geography mostly, and also because of the size of the school and the amount of money that James Madison takes from its students to put toward athletics. I've been on the campus. It's a terrific campus in Harrisonburg. It already has an FBS feel. James Madison could go tomorrow to the AAC or the Sun Belt and be just fine. They're going to be just perfect. NDSU, because of geography, just is stuck up here in the middle of nowhere. And so that's the biggest issue for NDSU, because if the AAC, and I'm just throwing this out, if the AAC calls tomorrow and says, you know what, we need to prepare for what's going to happen, are you interested in joining the AAC? Because we love your football brand. Your football brand is going to bring something to our conference. Let's go. Matt Larson would say, well, yeah, for football, sure.
Correct.
But the other sports, no, because we can't afford it. And then does the AAC go, oh, well, okay, no thanks. We'll find somebody else then. And that's going to be the same issue with the Mountain West. If the Mountain West calls tomorrow, Craig Thompson calls Dean Brashani or Matt Larson and says, look, we think Boise's going to go, or look, we think Air Force is going to go. We'd love to have you in our league because you're a great football brand and you might win our conference the first year you're in it. Okay? And you would say, absolutely.
Without hesitation.
But basketball and everything else, no, we don't want to stay in the Summit League. And then what does Craig Thompson say?
So to that counterpoint, the American added Wichita State a few years back. Remember that? They left the Missouri Valley, and Wichita obviously doesn't play football. So they're a member in everything else, all the Olympic sports outside of football. So it has been done before.
Yep.
You have done extensive reporting on James Madison. As you mentioned, you've been there. They are waiting. It's a matter of whenever the invitation comes under the door that they're ready to say.
From the right conference.
From the American. It's not the Sun Belt.
And when I was there talking to the AD and the president at James Madison, they didn't say it, but they made clear.
Implied?
Yes, they strongly implied that the AAC is where they want to go. And if they got an invite from the Sun Belt or Conference USA, they would politely decline. And I think, I don't know, I think that they may have gotten an invitation or at least a phone call from some of the other leagues, and James Madison said, no, thank you. I don't know that. That's clear, just for putting dots together.
What you're inferring would be the Sun Belt and Conference USA. Those are the leagues that would entertain. Right now, they would take James Madison.
They would take James Madison yesterday.
Now. Yes. Yeah. The American consists, for those that don't know, that's Cincinnati, who won the league this year. They played in a New Year's Bowl game.
Yep.
Memphis, Tulsa, Central Florida, who went unbeaten when Scott Frost was there. SMU, which has actually built themselves back into actually a half-decent football program. Houston, Navy, Tulane, where our guy Willie Fritz is, former Sam Houston coach. Yeah. East Carolina, where Iron Mike Houston is at. Temple, and South Florida.
Yep.
That's the league. And if James Madison's in that league, they're in the top 4 in a not too distant future, I think.
And they're it's just a perfect geographic fit for them. And that's why I get some guff and some back and forth on Twitter from some people saying, well, why would NDSU limit itself to the Mountain West? If something happens, if all these conferences move around, why not shoot for the AAC because it's a better conference? The answer to all of these questions is, first of all, you need an invitation.
Yep.
NDSU doesn't say, hey, we want to join the AAC.
You can't do the Liberty route.
No. I mean, you need an invitation. I think an invitation would be more realistic from the Mountain West. And I think just the geography and the like institutions and the recruiting and the money part of it.
Yep.
For me, the Mountain West just seemed to be a better fit. North Dakota seems to me to be more of a Western state than an Eastern or a Southeastern or a Southern state. And maybe none of that matters.
Well, geography doesn't matter anymore.
I know, but I'm stuck in the old models where geography matters. But I just think in terms of recruiting and in terms of all of that, I think the Mountain West would be a better fit. Is it all going to happen?
I think
I think that it is.
Yes.
I think the dominoes are going to start falling.
the die is cast on that.
Yeah.
It's Oklahoma and Texas are as good as gone.
Yes.
I think.
And that's going to start the whole thing.
Yeah. And we saw it happen 10 years ago when word got out that Nebraska was going to leave the Big 12 to go to the Big 10.
Mhm.
And that was the start of it. And before we knew it, Texas was going to go to the Pac-12 with UCLA and USC.
And West Virginia ended up in the
Big 12.
Big 12.
Yep.
Which is, you just there and go, what? And Missouri's in the SEC.
Correct.
And you go,
Yep.
what?
Yep. So back to your column on this, and this is where I want to kind of wrap on this, where the appetite is at North Dakota State and the current climate that's around the administration right now.
Yep.
Because obviously we know Dean Brashani's tenure is ending a year from December 2022.
Or before,
before.
if they find a replacement, the Board of Higher Education finds a replacement for him before that. He's done when they name the new president.
So he's a lame duck. So is there an appetite to go down this road knowing that there are gonna be stones thrown at every corner on this from people that think it's not a right move?
And that was the question I had as I first started getting into this stuff back in December. Was I think I have a pretty good feel of where the football program sits on this. I think I have a pretty good feel of where the athletic director sits on this. I never got a good feel on where the president sits on FBS. And frankly, as I point out today in my column, I've never asked him either. Part of it was he's not, Brashani is not trustworthy or trustful of the media, and he's not going to say anything anyway. And we never really, sometimes we'd run into him at road games and you get a chance to chit chat and everything else. That just didn't happen this year because of COVID and all of the other stuff. So I never got a clear picture of where he sits on FBS. In the past, when we've asked him about it, he's always said, FCS is our sweet spot.
He told me that. I did a story. I did a feature on this. Granted, this is 7 years ago, and how much has changed, but that's exactly
and
what
I
he
think
said.
I did something on him 2 or 3 years ago, and the answer was the same. The FCS is our sweet spot. And Matt Larson, who was hired by Dean Brashani, has always repeated that. Now, Matt Larson, when you asked him about it on the record, on camera, did not say that.
No.
The last time you talked with Matt about it. He said,
that was in January.
It's our job to look at opportunities that forward the institution.
And protect our brand.
And protect our brand. Or advance our brand.
Advance the brand, too. Yep.
So, to answer your question in 7 million words or more, Brashani, I think he might have been lukewarm on this anyway, although people have talked to him about it. People at NDSU have talked to him about it. The subject has been broached with the president's office. I always got the sense he was lukewarm on it anyway because he's just, every time he crosses a street for the last 10 years, he just gets mowed down by, Rob Port or Roscoe Striley or Mike Jacobs or, name your person in Grand Forks, whatever. And so I think he finally just said, I'm just going to just do my deal here and stay out of the spotlight. Yeah. And now that he's on a short leash because he basically got fired by the Board of Higher Education, I don't know how much capital he has left to spend and how much of that he wants to spend. The way his contract is set up, once he's done being president, he is going to be given a tenured teaching position at NDSU.
Position, yeah.
I mean, does the board say, okay, if you rock the boat,
that's done.
You're done. And given the makeup of the Board of Higher Education and what short-sighted, petty, vindictive clods they are, I don't see any way that they wouldn't do that to Dean Brashani. It's clear that they don't like Dean Brashani and they were going to get rid of him. So they're going to do anything they can to screw him over. And so does he just sit in his house in North Fargo and wait till December 2022 comes along?
That wouldn't surprise me either on that front if that were the course he goes down. Or he does the other.
Or does he say,
opposite.
you know what? I've got money in the bank.
Yeah.
I'm recently married. I'm getting to the end of the road anyway. I would have liked to keep on doing this, but I'm not going to. So, to hell with you all. We're going FBS. Stop me.
That would be really intriguing if that were to be the option.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either.
I don't think that's in him right now, but
I have got a sense, since you and I have both been reporting on this for the last 6 months, I think the temperature is changing with some Bison fans.
Mm-hmm.
Some you will
Yes.
immediately get pushed back and say, "Why would we want to do it? Why would we want to go to a December 23rd bowl game where nobody, And I was in that boat. I freely was in that, Mike, until 2019, I'd say, and even especially last year.
Yeah.
Seeing what happened last year certainly emboldened me to the other side of this. But I think there has been a temperature change with, I think, more reasonable Bison fans to say this is the way to go. This is our future, because the FCS ranks are only going to get more diluted as we go forward.
Yeah, and I'm kind of on the same timeline as you. I think up until 2018, 2019, it was, hey, this is, they're in the right spot.
Yep.
But then you kind of saw in 2019, the playoff games at the Fargo Dome were, 12,000 for Nicholls State? And you kind of went, oh,
Illinois State was the same way.
Illinois State was 14,000.
It was a bit more for Montana State.
They pushed hard to get a sellout for Montana State.
That was the semifinal.
And a semifinal. Yep. And it just seems like fans are going, well, I mean, we've done this 1,000 times. And the early round playoff games, they win by 45 points. And so what are we doing here? The other thing you have to think about if you're a fan is NDSU has done what it can do in FCS.
What else is there?
What else is there?
Right.
And the only place to go is down.
Correct.
I mean, you've had 2 first-round draft choices at quarterback. You've hosted College Game Day twice. You've won 8 championships, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff we've talked about. You've done Frisco 8 times. Yep. You've done Frisco 8 times. You've hosted 40 playoff games. There truly is nothing left to accomplish in FCS. You can't do any better than they've done unless you win 10 championships in 10 years, and then it's even worse.
Yeah, right.
And so the only place to go is down, and the best you can do is you're on a treadmill running in place. You can't get any better than 15-0.
Right.
You can't get any better.
They did 16-0.
16-0, right. I mean, you can't do any better than they've done. So it's at some point you have to go, there's got to be something else out there, even if it feels like we don't have a chance to be as important as we are now.
Yep.
With a 12-team playoff, can you be the best group of 5 team, win the Mountain West, and get a ranking in the 12 teams and make it to the college football playoffs?
And then you are let's say a 12 seed, and you're playing 5th seeded Texas to bring this whole thing back to where we started. How about that?
Right. Is that any good?
Playing in New Orleans.
Is that any good?
That'd be all right.
That's okay. And even if you don't make the college football playoffs, what the fans are going to say is, oh, I don't want to play in the Motor City Bowl. First of all, fans, give yourself some credit. It matters that you care so much about your team. Yep. It matters that you travel so much with NDSU. These bowl games are looking for fan bases that travel.
Yes. Yep. Great.
You travel.
Yep.
You spend money.
San Diego would love you.
You buy tickets. Yep. You're going to get a better bowl game than the Motor City Bowl. If NDSU is
succeeds on the field,
8-4 or whatever, you're going to get a warm weather
Memphis.
Bowl in late December.
Yeah, that'd be okay.
Nashville? Is Phoenix okay? Yeah. Is Frisco okay?
And that was my next point. Like, even what if they went for a 9th time to Frisco, but it's a bowl game?
Right. And you bring 20,000 people with you. It would be the same. And the weather would be better, by the way, in December than it would be in January, I think, in Frisco. But be that as it may, that's okay.
Yep.
I mean, pat yourself in the back and say, we travel and spend money, so we're going to get a decent bowl game.
I think the temperature on that is changing. And I just, hand to God here, I got 2 messages from members of the Bison football team, current members, direct messaged me on Twitter saying, what do you think the chances of us getting a Mountain West invite if Boise State left? So there are at least a couple members on the football team that are apparently know what's happening and are aware of what's going on. That to me, I was eye-opening.
Yeah,
that at least
I'm surprised by that.
There's
too.
Some of that on there.
Surprised in a pleasant way.
Yes, that's what I was too, and I responded. It will be interesting. NDSU has to be positioned for it if it were to come, and I think we're both in here, and I think others are as well. That James Madison is. I don't know if the Bison are. To off your column.
Yep,
as well.
and I just don't know.
Yeah.
And and that's partially on me, but I've been trying. I just
Yeah,
just
well, you and I both on that front. It's fascinating. And to put a bow on this, just Texas and Oklahoma will start the dominoes, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Every other of the Power Five will react. Big Ten's going to react. ACC's going to react. The Pac-12's going to react to say, okay, well, we're going to go get. It's like getting the crumbs from the table. Who else are we going to go get?
Then the other funny thing is a lot of the resistance to this is from NDSU fans. Many people on the outside who are FBS followers or reporters or fans, they say, well, yeah, why wouldn't you go FBS?
Right.
Of course. Of course. I mean, yes, it's a group of 5. It's Mountain, but it's not the Big Ten. But yeah, of course, go.
And I disagree with, I think, with people that think they wouldn't get those FBS games, Mike. I think they would now. I think Minnesota maybe not play them. Wisconsin may. Nebraska may. Yeah. They need games.
Yeah. I think Sam Herder is one of those. He's from
Hero Sports.
Hero Sports. Yeah. He's one of the guys that says, I don't know if they'd get. But
those schools need games.
I think they would.
Yes.
They do. They need games, and they want to play FBS games.
Correct.
And not FCS games.
And losing to an FBS team is way less hurtful than losing to an FCS one.
I mean,
so
Boise State gets games. Cincinnati gets games. Yep. I mean, they all get decent.
And by the way, for the fans out there, the paydays are double what Oregon's going to give the Bison. $685,000 for a game 7 years from now. Will be double that.
Wyoming gets huge paydays.
Yes.
And which is a better name brand in the college football world? Wyoming or North Dakota State?
I think we know the answer
I think
on that
North
one.
Dakota State myself, but what do I know?
It's just fascinating here. And it's all because of Texas, who has not been really relevant in football since Vince Young won the national championship for it, and that was 2005.
Wow. Which is
Mac
hard
Brown
to believe
I know.
that Texas can't win at football. Can't win big at football. That's incredible.
Just think of this, and again, to put a finer point on what Mike's talking about, the money, and I shared this with you earlier, a potential ESPN doubleheader in October could have LSU play Texas, followed by Oklahoma and Alabama, or Oklahoma and Auburn.
I might watch.
You and about 300 million other people would
if
watch,
I'm not in Las Vegas covering NDSU, playing UNLV in the Mountain West.
Which would be on national television as well. That would be ESPN2 or a Fox Sports 1 game.
Bison fans, boosters, donors.
Vegas.
Vegas.
San Diego.
I mean, Vegas is not going to be going to the Big 12. Vegas is not.
No.
UNLV is not going to be that team. So that one's safe.
Yep.
San Diego State, there's been talk of the AAC wanting them. But that was sort of, now with all this movement, I don't know about that.
Who the hell knows anymore?
Hawaii.
Oh, man.
I'd rather go to Macomb. Well, let's take a road trip to Terre Haute. Let's go.
What do you think the rest of the FCS thinks today, knowing that their two preeminent schools are definitely entertaining?
Well, there's two ways of looking at it. One is
bye-bye.
Right, bye-bye. Right. Here's the Jackrabbits' chance to win their national championship. Yep. The other one is, what's going to be left? Because you've already lost App State, Coastal Carolina, Georgia Southern,
Old Dominion. And if you lose NDSU and James Madison, those are your two premier programs in FCS. And so your premier program left over is South Dakota State, James Madison. I'm sorry, Sam Houston.
Sam Houston.
And Sam Houston, as we know, you reported on this when they made the move to the WAC. The WAC wants to move. Well, so maybe the WAC's opportunity here now.
So we didn't even touch on that because now maybe the WAC or this new Atlantic Sun thing.
Yep.
And they, they're all talking out of their rear ends about, we're going FBS. But maybe this is an opportunity for them as well. Maybe the Mountain West now looks at Sam Houston and says, go FBS and you can be in our league.
Man.
I don't, but that's all what's going to happen here.
It's fascinating, and it's just going to, the ripple effects will be felt here. I really believe that, and I'm curious to see who will be ready and willing to go. Who's ready to make the move, The moves we saw this January, I know you talked with Matt Brown, as did I, from the Extra Points newsletter, who follows us even more closely than we do, that this was going to be the start of it. And now here we are where we're talking about two monster powerhouse institutions ready to shake up college
Yep.
sports. It's going to be
I was
great.
told by somebody who has been pretty good to me on this that they thought once they approved the playoffs, that's when things were going to start happening. I don't think they foresaw this happening
this
I
soon.
mean, we all know it's going to happen.
Yeah,
but
the rubber stamp on the college football playoff is going to happen.
But it was sort of just wait
Yeah.
till that comes. Then you're going to see the avalanche start to happen.
It's July 22nd, and we are exhausted from the amount of stuff that's happened this offseason, whether it be the one-time transfer, name, image, likeness coming down the pipe, this with realignment, the Supreme Court beat down.
It's just incredible.
I mean, just...
And I don't know, we've talked about this before as well. I don't know how much the fans care. I still get the sense that the fans go, I just want to watch football.
Yep.
I don't want to be overwhelmed by politics at games. I don't want to be overwhelmed by money, the players getting paid. I don't want to be overwhelmed by trying to figure out who's in what conference. I just want to watch
the game.
Football and have the kids run around and catch and run and all that stuff.
The transfer one I think they do care about because that is taking some of their players
how
away.
It affects their team.
Yes.
Negatively or positively.
Yep.
And most fans hate it because they get a kid on campus. They want him there for 5 years to win football games.
Ain't happening anymore.
No.
Ain't happening in basketball either, which is the other big one you should watch.
Correct.
This was awesome. Let's do this again sometime, all right?
We will.
Mike McFeely joining us here on the Dizzo's Den podcast, updating things on the realignment waves and what's to come. Thanks for listening, everybody. Check out more of Mike's work at inforum.com and, of course, our Bison Media Zone coverage all off-season.